Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 955. I had the black pieces. My opponent went d4 and I went knight f6, hoping to play the Grunfeld. And he obliged by playing all the main moves here. c4, I go g6. I almost went e6 by mistake because I so often play the Nimzo Indian, which is where I would get to after e6 or something related. But anyway, he plays all the main moves here and lets me get in d5. The key move of the Grunfeld, and it's important to get in this d5 move at this point. If you give white another chance, for example, by playing bishop g7, he can play e4 and just prevent d5, and you have to play a king's Indian, which is fine if you want to play a king's Indian, but if you want to play a Grunfeld, you have to do d5 right here on move 3. So he goes for the main line. One thing about the Grunfeld, if you want to play it, is you do have to be aware there's a number of different replies here, and knight f3 is a very respectable and common way of avoiding the main lines, which are kind of sharp. Although I play the main line as white, I think it's fun to play for both sides. And in addition to the knight move, you also have these bishop moves. Bishop f4 and bishop g5 are quite respectable ways to play as well. But if you can put up with learning a few lines, I think it's quite fun to play. I don't think it's as, I don't think there's as much heavy theory as it has the reputation of being. I guess the point is, if you played at the club level, your opponents are probably not going to know the theory any better than you. So you're both on your own. And you can use some strategic principles to guide your play here. So in the main line, if you're playing as black, and in many variations, you just want to put the bishop on this diagonal and start undermining the center, particularly the dark squares. So if you just keep that in mind, that can be a guide for your play. And if you're playing the white side, you've built a big center in the main line, and you just want to hold on to it as long as you can. So all these moves seem very natural from that point of view. And of course, there are many possible ways to defend the center. I usually take this chance. You have one opportunity here to get this bishop outside the pawn chain, as it were, looking at a sensitive square. So that's the bishop c4 move. That's the way I usually play. And then you bring the other bishop and the knight in to defend. But he just went bishop e3 immediately to defend. That's fine. Or you could play the knight to f3 there. And I go with c5. A key idea in the Grunfeld, you don't mind losing this pawn. If white takes it, he's got these doubled c-pawns that are isolated anyway, so it's no big deal. You can usually round them up quite easily when you want to with a move like queen to a5. And you don't even have to play that. You can just leave those pawns there as a weakness for the long run, just things to play against. And also when white takes here, it's just one less obstacle along that long diagonal, so you're helping to clear the diagonal for your bishop. So white's normal move here is knight f3, just continuing to defend the center. That's certainly what I would play. There are other moves here, queen to d2, maybe getting the queen off the back rank, maybe thinking to exchange bishops here. So what, knight f3, queen d2, rook c1, getting the rook off of that diagonal. That's often an idea. Sometimes the rook also comes out to b1, but it looks like in this line, it looks rook c1 is the main move. e5 is not a particularly good move. In fact, the chess engine thinks that black is equal or better after this point. You have all these weaknesses on light squares here, so white has pushed on a little bit too far, and it can still be undermined. White has successfully shut out this bishop for the moment, but this structure in the center is quite fragile. We'll see in the middle game I failed to really take advantage of it, but I had opportunities because of the way he played here. And so for the next few moves, it's equal to better for black. Let's see, he continued. Oh, I continued with knight c6. This is fine. He goes knight f3. I castled. Queen a5 is preferred by the chess engine, and just bringing the queen out and putting pressure on these pawns, particularly pinning that c-pawn, is kind of interesting. It's another way of indirectly pressuring the d-pawn. Let's see, but I went I castled. He went bishop d3 here. It's a good square for the bishop, and I went bishop g4. And here, Let's show one of these lines. The chess engine also likes queen a5 here, but c takes d4 is possible, followed by queen a5 check. The bishop has to drop back, and then the queen just goes back here. But there's a lot of pressure on the center. The center has been weakened, and we're piling up pressure on it. And it's a little early to bring these pawns forward because that'll open up this diagonal at perhaps an inopportune time. So this is good for black, and that's the way to get the biggest advantage here. Anyway, I just keep developing with bishop g4. This is okay, and black is still, at least equal here and maybe slightly better. Let's see, went bishop e4, I went rook c8, and then he went queen c1. So rook c8, the chess engine criticized this move and thinks that white has gotten back to a decent position if white would just castle here. Once again, instead of rook to c8, I should play either pawn takes d5 or queen a5, or maybe both. Those ideas I've already shown you, so they're still valid here. But I went rook c8, wasn't thinking along the right lines, and he went queen c1 here, and I didn't. This is my chance to just get a winning edge here, and I didn't take advantage of it. I mean, queen c1 is kind of a logical move. He's lining up his queen and his bishop to trade off my bishop here, but I should pay attention to the center. I was talking all this time about how black's idea is to put pressure on the center and try and increase the scope of this bishop on the long diagonal. And here's a place where I just have him outnumbered on d5. I just have to get rid of this knight. And let's see, I thought he would take back with the bishop and kind of preserve his pawn structure, but I can still take here. He takes, I take with the knight, and it's pretty annoying because not only have I taken with the knight, but the rook has opened up against the queen, so I've gained a tempo here. I guess the queen goes here, and I can take off the bishop with check. So it's not like he even gets to keep the bishop pair advantage. I've just won a pawn, and I have a 2-to-1 pawn majority on the queen side, and he hasn't even castled yet. So that's actually already winning here. So queen c1 was a big mistake, and my mistake was not taking advantage of it. But well, I was thinking about chipping away at the center. I chose this f6 move, which in other circumstances might have been good, but not here, because there was a better move here. I mean, f6 is not a bad move, but the other move is better. Well, let's see. He went d5. So yeah, every move here is a blunder. So both sides are blundering. Once again, let's see. Instead of d5, what should he play here? He takes f6. Yeah, he should exchange here. Relieve some of the pressure on the center. I guess taking back with the rook is better than taking back with the pawn. And then d takes c5. So try and hold on in this position. But I'm happy to have these doubled pawns to play against, and this is a slight edge for black here. So, f6 was not a blunder. Well, it's a blunder because I overlooked a better move, but it was not a bad move in and of itself. Let's see. So d5 was a mistake. He needs to trade here, but he pushed on, and now I took, but I have a better move here. Instead of just taking the pawn, I can kick his bishop. I thought this would just be a trade, but if you follow it through, so he takes my knight, I take his bishop. Let's see, he can take one more pawn because it's hitting the rook, and I have to do something about that. But at the end of the day, he's got a problem with this knight. In fact, if the knight goes to d2, which maybe is the most natural move, the queen comes in here with a mate threat. And, well, this is pretty severe. His king is not castling. There's an immediate mate threat. If the pawn comes forward, it can be traded off. He's just in big trouble here in the center. So yeah, his position is collapsing. So let's see, after f5 he takes, I take. His best move with the knight is knight back to g1, which at least will prevent a mate from happening on e2, but this is still really, really strong for, let's see. Oh, he could throw in c takes b7, then knight back to g1. But this is still really good for black. I can just take the e-pawn, for example, and the queen could still come in here to d3. Anyway, although it's not a mate threat, it's still kind of paralyzing black. So those were times I had opportunities I had to win the game, and I failed to take advantage of in the middle game here. But it's it shows why the Grunfeld is an interesting way to play. There's just all these tactical possibilities in the center, particularly if white has neglected to castle like this. So anyway, I recommend it for players who are looking for another defense against d5, or d4 rather. Okay, so anyway, I took the pawn when knight takes e5. He took back. And this is, well, once again, it's not bad. Black is at least okay and maybe slightly better. It's just that I could have done much better. Here, once again, he should castle, but he played bishop to h6. And so this gives me an advantage that persists for a while. This is not like as big an advantage as I had earlier, but this is the right way to play this with bishop f5. I was kind of curious. Well, okay, he took here first, and then he took this bishop off. I was kind of wondering whether it's better to take with the pawn or the rook, but actually the chess engine agrees with my decision here. Rook takes keeps the biggest edge for black, and maybe it's still a winning advantage here. It's in the range of 1.5 points on the chess engine for what that is worth. Let's see. He played c5, defending his center here, and I went e6 to undermine. So once again, queen a5 would have been a much stronger move here. You know, somehow I was thinking he would just block with the queen and it'd be kind of dull after trading the queens, but that's just winning for me because I will get to take on f2 with check after the queen trade. So in fact, he has to move his king to f1, which means his rook is going to be out of play for a while. And I can just pile up on the f-pawn or push my e-pawn forward if he tries to block with f3. The chess engine likes queen to a6. Pinning this pawn, maybe threatening here eventually. I mean, maybe the idea is to threaten there by pushing the e-pawn forward. Anyway, keeps his queen tied down defending it because he doesn't want to give that pawn up. And once again, white is kind of tied up in knots there. Anyway, I went e6, which is not a bad move here. He went c4. I went e6. Why is it doing that? Click, click, click. Okay, I don't know why I was doing that. Okay, he went c4. I went e6. Let's see. He went queen d2 here, stopping the checks. I went ahead and took. He was also not only stopping the checks, but defending the d-pawn in advance. I don't know why. You know, when I played queen d2, I was wondering why I went to d2 instead of to d1 to defend. But obviously, he was aware of this queen a5 check idea. It just was like a blind spot of mine throughout this game. So if you guys are playing the Grunfeld, remember queen a5. Let's see. He played. Oh, it's my turn here. I played rook to c7. I'm preparing just to pile up on that d-pawn. He went rook d1. I went e4. Although the immediate queen d6 was stronger, but I'm still keeping an advantage through this part. But maybe it's not quite as much as it was. Anyway, rook d1. I went e4. He went d6. I'm blocking this way. I figure I'm going to round that pawn up, but he's getting something back. Let's see. He delivers this check. I block with the rook, and then he played queen takes c5, and I grab his advanced pawn. Unfortunately, I take it the wrong way. So this is the point where the game becomes drawn. So I was actually winning up to this point, and now it becomes a draw. But it would still be a win if I had taken with the other rook. So I guess the idea here is that I'm threatening to take on d1 here and mate him. So he's got to exchange. He doesn't want to give up the d file, I guess. That seems pretty horrible if he has to move the rook away. And then I can take back with the queen. The other way, when I line up the rooks this way, I'm forced to take back with the rook. So it wants me to take back with the queen. And then, well, once again, I guess his queen doesn't have many good options. I guess if the queen just moves away, I can bring my queen in with check, maybe bring the rook in and mate him quickly while this rook is out of play. So it seems the queen trade is forced. And then the chess engine just thinks this is a winning rook and pawn endgame. There's pawns on both sides of the board, and I can easily create a passer on the queen side I can attack this weakened a-pawn, and his rook is not yet playing. So it's easy to believe that's a winning rook and pawn endgame, and that would have been the way for me to convert this win at this point. But instead I took with the other rook, and that forces me to take back with the rook. I really wasn't thinking of trading. I was thinking that with the queens on, I have play against his open king, but he gets to castle, gets his rook into the game, and so actually, once I play this rook takes d6 with the wrong rook, it's actually just a draw. So let's step forward, and we'll see when we lose this draw. But he could have really just taken the draw at any point here by perpetual check. I was not trying to do anything particularly extravagant. If I try too hard here, I will just lose. I'll walk my king into a bad position. There's just no way to avoid all those checks. So here, for example, he could have gone queen e5 check, and that would have led to a draw. He played rook e1, not yet losing, but a little bit risky. Let's see, I went queen d7 here, offering a queen trade, thinking that with the rooks on, I have a better chance, particularly if I can pick up this a-pawn, better winning chance. Chess Engine says my best chance with the queen was queen f6. And again, if he trades, it looks like a good rook and pawn ending for me, so he drops his queen back. And it gives a slight edge to black here, but still probably drawn. Anyway, that was his strongest moves. I mean, he wandered into a little bit of trouble here, but maybe not a winning advantage. So let's keep it. Let's call it. It's still a draw here. Let's see. He went rook e1. I went queen d7. He went queen e5 check. So checked my king around a little bit more and then pushed his pawn forward. And all this is still drawn. And you can see he had opportunities to just keep checking. But now he pushed. And actually, this is still a draw here. So we will. But it seems like I think he's giving me some chances here, because now I have this check. And my idea is to check and then take this pawn. And so I thought he would just move his king to the side. I mean, because this is just a trade. He had grabbed a pawn. I'm just grabbing it back in a convenient way. I want my queen over here to help shepherd this pawn in, and I would still play for the win here. So he blocked. I don't know if we'd gone down that other path if I really could have won that. But blocking is still a draw at this point, in spite of what happened in the game, because his king is in a good enough position, and my pawn is close enough that he can hold the draw. So let's show how it should have gone here. So the draw is still in hand at this point. We've all been, moving our kings towards the center and then moving our pawns forward. I went h6. He went g4 here. So g4 is a move that gives away the game, although I don't take advantage of it. But let's show the draw here. Instead of moving his pawn, king to d5. And so I'm going to try and bring my king forward to take these pawns. Well, he has to keep an eye on this pawn, so I'm going to try and take advantage of the fact that the king has to stay in the neighborhood of this pawn. So I push my king forward. He can play g3. And now that's the difference between what he played. He played g4. When he plays g3, he's controlling all these squares, and my king can't get in. And his king is blocking my king from going around. So now I have to start, well, first I can play one move here to kind of lock down the pawns. Let's see, he can go king d4. Then I can start pushing the b pawn to distract his king. So let's run this forward. I pull the king away by pushing my b pawn, and then finally I step my king to the side, and when he takes, I can come around and attack these pawns. But just as I get in position to attack these pawns, he can push them forward. And now I come in to attack the pawns, but he can trade. And even though I win the pawns, his king is close enough. So it was the fact that it was the b pawn is helping him out here. I would have an extra tempo if that were an a pawn. Yeah, well, let's see. Let's wind it forward the way I had it here. He just runs to the... if he gets his king on either one of these squares, I can't ever really get the pawn in. So that's just a draw. So that would have been the way to handle this, to hold his pawns back on this side, keep his king in the center, keep my king imprisoned until the last possible moment when he's forced to come back and round up this pawn, and the timing just works out for him. So g4 is a mistake, and let's see, I can win now with king to e6. The point is that he can't really advance these pawns. If he goes here, I'll go here, and I'll have 2 pawns over here, which makes a big difference, 2 pawns versus 1 pawn. If I get to gobble up the pawns, as we saw in that previous line, and I have 2 pawns left, then even if he gets his king in front, he can't stop them. So, so it makes a big difference if he gets to trade off one of those pawns. Yeah, so if he pushes this pawn, I push this pawn. So either way, he's not pushing those pawns forward. And it looks like a win from here. I guess he could try pushing the f pawn forward. I didn't look at all the details, but anyway, king e6 is the winning idea here. Let's see, g4. I went g5, just trying to settle this situation, and he took, which is correct. So now it's back to a draw, and he just has to play king e4. And let's watch this draw. So I push the b pawn forward again. Let's run this forward. He pushes the f pawn forward with his king over here. And once again, it's because this pawn on the b file is close enough. So I can take here. He takes. Then I start pushing this, and he comes back here, and he's inside the square of the pawn. So he's just in time to stop my pawn. And that is a draw. Let's see. Yeah, the chess engine had him throwing in g5 check first, but it doesn't really make any difference. He gets to this e3 square inside the square of the pawn. Okay, so in this position, instead of playing king e4, he played king d5. So king e4 was here. He played king d5 here. And it's actually just a loss from here on out. He can't win. He lost a tempo there or something. And I'm taking these pawns. In general, you want to let's look at this. You want to keep your b pawn back. If you can force the king to round up the pawn while it's back like this, then it makes it harder for him to get his king back in front of the pawn where it wants to be. So that's why I held back on pushing the b pawn until the last possible moment. So that's your general strategy. You want to wait with your outside passer, not push it until you've kind of resolved the situation over here as much as you can. Then you push this pawn to distract the king so that your king has the quickest path in to round up these pawns, and that's how you win. Okay, let's wind it forward. So I pushed, he went over there, and I got my king in, and after I took this pawn, he resigned because he realized he wasn't going to be able to get his king in front of the pawn. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, learned a little bit about king and pawn endgames, and I will see you next time. Bye.